More than 1.5 million Americans filed for new claims for unemployment benefits last week, but there are signs that things could be turning around. The new figures from the U.S. Labor Department mark the 10th straight weekly decline of Americans seeking jobless benefits since claims peaked at the end of March due to the coronavirus pandemic. Joining me now on Skype with his analysis is Jay Richards, research assistant professor at the Bush School of Business at the Catholic University of America. Jay, welcome back to the show. So good to see you.
You too, Tracy. Thanks so much.
Well, the numbers are still historically high, but it does look like people are returning to the workforce. Can we talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. I mean, it depends on your perspective. I mean, the reality is there have been 40 million people have filed first-time jobless claims since the beginning of the pandemic, but that's not a net total of people that are still out of work. There are a lot of people that have returned either to full-time work or what's looking like here in the last few weeks, some people returning part-time. And so it's a little bit difficult to say exactly what the numbers of unemployed are, but I do think we've definitely passed the worst of it. I think the market itself suggests that. And these most recent jobless numbers, I think, are definitely a sign for optimism.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we know that an economic recovery is not going to happen overnight, but there are still tens of millions of Americans that are out of work. What can we expect to see in terms of ongoing support for them, Jay?
Well, I suspect that there might be another rescue package like we had a couple of months ago. I mean, this is not a long-term fix. So you can't have millions of people out of work and then have the government essentially borrowing money from the future and paying people and we're not producing. That's ultimately going to lead to a great deal of inflation. On the other hand, I think that the mood at the moment is that we need to open up. The states that opened up early that were supposedly going to lead to a great increase in cases of COVID-19 hasn't happened. So I think just the sort of early indications are that sometime during the summer here, most of the states will open up. There are already good signs that actually restaurants are opening up. People are making reservations to eat out. So I think really we need a lot more of that, quite frankly. And if we've got it, I think by the fall, as long as we don't panic ourselves into another shutdown, I think we can expect some kind of modest recovery.
Yeah, we're still grappling, of course, with the coronavirus. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin said today, quote, that we can't shut down the economy again. What do you think the balance between economic health and public health will be or should be going forward?
Well, the balance needs to be based on the data. I mean, initially, this initial shutdown was based on computer models that predicted certain number of deaths, predicted that the virus was going to have a certain kind of deadliness that turned out not to be true. I mean, we essentially prepared for the worst case scenario. We now have a lot more evidence about the effects of the virus. We know that actually what we need to do is quarantine people that are high risk and not lock everyone down. So I'm hoping that enough people will realize that. Yes, the coronavirus is a real thing. It's a bad thing. It can kill people, but it makes absolutely no sense to shut down the entire economy. And so if we get another season of this, like you get with the flu season, I hope we'll have a much more rational response. There'll be voluntary social distancing, and we won't have an utter shutdown of the economy. I think we made a really bad calculation the first time, and I just really hope we don't do it a second time.
Yeah, Jay, before I let you go, any final thoughts on this?
Absolutely. I mean, I think people ought to educate themselves. Don't worry about the news stories that you hear about states that increase the number of cases. Cases are the result of increased testing. That doesn't mean things are getting worse. Look at the total numbers of people dying, hospitalizations overall, and notice that we're in a positive trend. And honestly, don't let the panic stories panic you. Keep a straight mind about these things.
All right, Jay, thank you so much for your time. We always appreciate it.
Thanks, Tracy.